One sign that honesty counts less in America these days. We're joined by David Callahan. He's the author of The Cheating Culture and a co-founder of the public policy think tank Demos. Welcome.
Great to be here.
I guess the name of your book pretty much says it all. You think Americans think less of cheating, whether it's on their resumes, their taxes, or in their executive suites. It's sad but true in your estimate?
Cheating is everywhere these days. Martha Stewart, Jason Blair, Sammy Sosa, it just keeps coming and coming. But, you know, cheating is not new in America. We've always had cheating. Some might say that cheating is the American way. This has always been a rough and tumble country. That said, it seems that there's a lot more of it these days, and the research backs that up. The IRS tells us there's more tax evasion these days. Researchers tell us that there's more students cheating in high school and college. Steroids has become pervasive in baseball. And then these financial scandals in the past few years dwarf anything we've seen since the Gilded Age. So it's everywhere.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the Gilded Age. I should point out, of course, that Martha Stewart hasn't been convicted of anything yet. We should remember that. But, you know, you mentioned the Gilded Age. I mean, doesn't this stuff just come and go and ebb and flow? You know what they say, there's nothing like a bull market to bring out the crooks and nothing like a bear market for them to get caught. You know, how do you measure this stuff?
This stuff does come and go. We go through phases where everybody seems to go crazy. And what I argue in my book is that the 80s and 90s has been one of those periods. It's been one of these go-go periods where we've all been obsessed with money, all been obsessed with getting ahead. It's a very materialistic culture we live in these days, obsessed with celebrities. You know, and you saw some of this in the 1920s too, and also in the robber baron era 100 years ago. I think that whenever we are obsessed with making money, getting ahead, whenever those values triumph in our culture, you get a lot of cheating. People will do anything to make it in American society.
David, let me just pick a little bit of a bone with you. I'm old enough to remember and grew up in a part of the country where there was a code of honor. And a man's word was his bond. And if you gave your word and shook a man's hand, it was considered as good as a written contract. That really did exist when I was a kid. What happened?
Well, I think that, you know, after World War II and after the Depression, there was a great deal of social solidarity in this country. People went through big hardships together. There was economic growth, but it was shared widely. The middle class, the working class, the upper class, they all got rich together. And I think what's happened in the 1980s and 1990s is we've had these growing disparities. We have this kind of overclass, this winning class that's doing exceptionally well, and a lot of middle class people are struggling. I think what you have is the winning class cheats because it can, because it feels that it can get away with it, and that is all too true. Meanwhile, the people in the middle, ordinary Americans, often cheat because they think the system is stacked against them. They don't think that society is fair. They're very cynical.
And so, David, are we at a pivotal point, at least in terms of, we can't talk about steroids or tax evasion, but like with all these trials coming up, are we at a pivotal point if a number of these high-profile executives, accountants, you name it, walk? That will just encourage other people and basically enable them to do the same thing?
The stakes are very high with these trials. You know, if these people walk, if Dennis Kozlowski walks, if Frank Quattrone walks, if there are not convictions in the WorldCom case, if Martha Stewart goes free, I think that it's going to send a signal that crime pays, at least at the highest levels. And what ordinary Americans will hear is that the system is stacked against them, that there is not fair justice in this country. What investors will hear is that government watchdogs cannot protect the integrity of financial markets. So, yes, the stakes are very high, and the sad truth is that it's going to be tough to get convictions in a lot of these cases. They're complex. These cases drag on. Look at the Tyco trial. It is tough stuff for prosecutors.
But, David, we seem to relish this kind of stuff. I mean, you think about movies and TV shows, you get sneaky people cheating around, all ha-ha-ha, and we seem to eat this stuff up. I mean, what can we do about that?
Well, it has become more part of the culture lately, and I think it's the values in American society have been very individualistic, very competitive. You know, the individualism that came out of the 60s got hooked up with the hyper-materialism and the competition of the 1980s. It's kind of the me generation has met greed is good, and the results are not pretty. And there are no easy solutions here, but I do think that we have to create a society where at least ordinary people feel that if they play by the rules, they can get ahead, and ordinary people also feel that the rules are fair, that some people don't get to walk when they do bad things while other people get mandatory minimum sentences.
I was going to say, hasn't there been a double or triple standard around for a long, long time? Phrases like the rich get rich and the poor get poor, then that gets. The fact of the matter is, if you have money in this country, you can hire better lawyers than if you don't have any money in this country. End of discussion.
That is the fact of the matter. We do not have a fair system of justice in this country. We have many people rotting in prison for nonviolent crimes because they got slapped with mandatory minimum sentences. Meanwhile, remember all those SNL scandals back in the late 80s? Those people got slaps on the wrist, a lot of them. They got these fines that they never paid. They got these prison sentences at country club prisons that they didn't serve out. You know, you walk into a bank and you slide a note to a teller saying you're not armed and you want money.
Right.
Somebody like that can get 10 years in prison.
Right.
You rip off a bank through an SNL scandal and, you know, you get a slap on the wrist. It's just, it is not fair.
Great. All right, David Callahan, provocative stuff, author of The Cheating Culture. Thanks.
Great to be here.